Okay, democratic economic planning. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for bearing with me for the whole tech issues thing. Like I said, that's the first law for capitalism, but I assure you, technology is not the enemy. Okay, we can use it to overcome capitalism. First, okay, I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'll let Leon introduce himself. Okay, so that you know who is talking. My name is Guillermo Murcia Lopez, Guille or Guillem for short. I'm a secondary school teacher. I'm actually here in the US working in a school in Springfield. So I'm not doing anything like a professional wise related to economic planning, but I'm also doing a PhD on the University of Valencia in my home country in Spain. It's related to labor law, labor sociology. I'm working on labor precarity, the concept of labor precarity, if it has increased, decreased in Spain after the labor reforms. Okay. And besides that, I'm part of this group called CibCom, which is short for Cibercomunismo or cyber communism, which aims to reignite the debate, the discussion about economic planning on the left and in general in society through the use of new technologies. We're a group that's a few years old. It's a big group. We've got people who have a background, like I said, my background is in political science, labor sociology, law. But we got people who have a background in physics and mathematics and philosophy, economics, and whatnot. So I'm going to work with Leon on presenting. I don't claim to know everything about all about economic planning because we are a diverse group and we've got people who are way more intelligent, way more knowledgeable than I am on the topic. So please excuse all the mistakes I might make. They're all me. And all the good things about the presentation, they are merit of my of people in our group in CibCom, especially Rodolfo Monico, who couldn't join us today because of something personal which came up, which is the other person who wasn't this in the presentations. Okay. And I'm going to let Leon present himself. Go ahead.
Hi. Hey all. Thanks for being here. I'm glad to be giving this presentation. So I am a physics grad student at Clemson University. I've been interested in economic physics, Marxist economics, and economic planning techniques now for the past couple of years or so. I run a study group on Discord for it. And I just love learning, and I apply a level of scientific rigor over every domain I come in contact with. So I was led here eventually by just thinking critically about like, okay, how should we? So like, if we want to actually build workers' power, right? What we need to do is get rid of exploitative capitalist relations in a way that they won't come back. So that's what I'm interested in this context. It's my first presentation on it, so excuse any mistakes I make. And as mentioned, I'm not the end all be all on the knowledge behind this. I may be more inclined towards the math and the statistics and more structurally the back end of economic planning, but there's others who know more than I do, so just keep that in mind, and hopefully you enjoy.
Okay, so I'm gonna kickstart the whole thing, then Leon will join and present the big chunk of the presentation actually. So what you're looking at there, that's just seems like an utopia, right? Beautiful green utopia where, well, you can see the people's faces, but they're probably very happy that they can walk around, chat with their friends, enjoy their life. So we can imagine those sort of things, okay? In science fiction, in our minds, we can posit that. Why can't we make them real with the knowledge, with the technology that we now have? Well, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to, like I said, try to reignite the debate on economic planning, which is something that has been not becoming prevalent, but at least the spark has been ignited after the 2008 Great Recession. Let me see if I can block the text a little bit less. In the wake of the Great Recession of 2008, there has been a growing awareness that by some people, of course, some other people are like okay with the system. They think that, they think that the system is okay, or maybe that we need even more capitalism and that the Great Recession was caused just by not having enough capitalism. But some other people have been growing more aware that we need to replace the system, the mode of production with something else. We all know, or I guess that we all know that why capitalism is unjust, is inefficient, it generates ill means of production. We got people who are unemployed. We got people who need things, who need goods, who need services, and then we have people who can work at providing them. We got unemployment. Maybe in the US it's a low rate, but where I come from in Spain, it's huge, especially youth unemployment. That's something that's not cool. That's something that's not good. It prevents people from creating a life project. It prevents people from enjoying life to their full extent, right? We got social needs that go unmet. Why? Okay, why do we have people who can't have housing? Why do we have people that can't have proper food? Have healthy food, and even leisure time. We got people, many of us, I guess, that spend our days working, and we get a bit of free time, but it's all subjected to the rule of capital. It's all subjected to the needs of capital for profitability, right? Also, capitalism has cyclical crises like the one in 2008 and the one that it might be on the verge of experiencing right now. Okay, so hopefully it doesn't affect any of us, but it's surely going to affect a lot of people, and it's going to create chaos. It's going to create justice, and it's going to, be very harmful to people. So, democratic economic planning, communism, is the antithesis of that. Instead of having a system that has profitability as the leitmotiv, as the main guide of where social needs should be met, instead of that, we want to put social needs at the forefront. Okay, so that's why Marx's critique of capitalism, which I guess that many people here are already familiar with, is important. Marx stressed that capitalism is based on the exploitation of human labor, that it has cyclical crises. There's a lot of debate on the whole crisis thing. There's the under-consumption in school, there's the falling rate of profit school, but what I think most Marxists agree is that there are cyclical crises that capitalism sort of needs to reproduce itself. It sort of needs those crises to cleanse itself, to restore profitability. Okay, so it works up and down, and in those downs, working people suffer. Capitalists don't really suffer that much, right? I mean, of course, some go broke, some lose a little bit of wealth, but you don't really fear for Jeff Bezos or Trump or all of those people when the crisis hits. You feel for you're scared, you're afraid, you fear for the people who are working, who might lose their houses, who might lose their jobs, etc. So the future society that we envision is one which overcomes the capitalist mode of production, communism, an emancipation project understood as self-government of society that will be exercised on the basis of collective control of the global productive process. So we know the problem, okay? But in anti-capitalism, in communist circles or anarchists, people give different answers to what we need to do to replace capitalism. Some people say, no, you don't need to do anything. Post-capitalism is already developing. Some people, especially those influenced by the Italian operaismo or autonomism, they think, capitalism is accepting itself. It's fading out. New technologies are coming up that are going to replace capitalism. I think even Antonio Negri said that the law of value is being phased out. Some other people like, Paul Mason say that we're moving towards post-capitalism, that we got some sort of techno-feudalism developing. So we don't need to do anything, okay? Technology is going to solve our problems by itself. So this is not the position of CibCom, the group I represent. We think technology is important, but it's not going to solve our problem. Because capitalism introduces technology to save human labor in order to get profits, okay? Not to provide for social needs. So you get technologies introduced, like right now, what's the hot topic besides the crisis that may be coming? in artificial intelligence. A lot of people are like, oh, they're going to, people are going to run out of jobs. Before that, it was robots. Robots were coming. Oh, they're going to get rid of people's jobs. They're going to be unemployed. And it might happen. I'm not sure. I'm still agnostic on the issue of the impact of artificial intelligence. It's still very new. But let's think that it might happen. Why does it happen? If you think about it, artificial intelligence is supposed to save human labor. You will. I don't know if you guys use Midjourney. You use Midjourney, so I create images or art and stuff like that. It's an artificial intelligence where you tell, can you generate an image of, I don't know, like the utopian world we saw in the first slide? That was created with Midjourney. I can draw. I'm very bad at drawing, but you get that in the prompt and then you get the image. It can save labor, right? Doesn't mean that people won't be able to draw, to illustrate. They will be able to still do it. But if I'm not able to, I can go in it and create an image. So why is it going to take people's jobs? If it does, take people's jobs away? Because it is introduced to raise profitability, to save human labor, not to provide me or anyone who wants to get art. We're just like a way for people to get profits, for that company to get profits, because you might pay for Midjourney, you might pay for that artificial intelligence, right? So human labor hasn't been reduced globally, even though these people claim that. It's been reduced maybe in some countries, but the clothes we wear, the electricity we use, all of that depends on human labor. Like the tech issues I was having, I needed someone to come solve them, right? Or if you can hear by car, you need some gas in your car. Someone has, brought that gas to the gas station. Someone has pumped it out, or so human labor is still necessary. Some other people, another answer in anti-capitalist circles and communist circles is that we don't need to come up with a proposal, not because it's already developing, but because, we can even think about it. And I heard some people talk about in the same way that a person in the Middle Ages in feudalism couldn't imagine capitalist society, you can't imagine what a post-capitalist society would be because you're too bound up in the framework of capitalism. So you can't even imagine that. It's like breaking all your frameworks of what you envision now, what you see, how society works. So you can't even think about it. You can't imagine it. So you need to focus on current struggles. Okay, class struggle. Workers will figure it out themselves. They will figure out how to create a post-capitalist society. And they are right in that we need to focus on current struggles. A lot of current struggles, class struggle is happening now. We need to support those struggles. We need to become part of them. We need to listen to people who are struggling. That's all right. But at the same time, even if we don't provide people, and I mean people, we, including the people who are struggling, because we're not some sort of, experts on the whole thing. Like I will stress later, this is a whole collective thinking process. We need to come up, even if it's with an horizon, so that we can keep walking towards that. We need to be able to tell people, yes, we're going to take care of the, you heard of the insulin problem. The insulin problem is just a way to say, okay, you had the revolution. We replace capitalism. How are people with diabetes going to get insulin tomorrow? Because people need insulin and medicine and a lot of stuff and books. We want to be able to read after capitalism. So how are those papers going to be produced? Books to be bound, right? And you need to tell them that it's going to be possible in some way. Not maybe fully detailed, because that's impossible, of course. Part of the struggle process is to fill out those details, but you need to be able to tell them that there's a feasible alternative to capitalism, which is economic planning. Another answer that some people have, I don't know if you're familiar with this tweet, sort of went viral, that you have to have faith in the goodwill of people. I know that the person who, you read the tweet, someone was asking, how will classes distribution work under anarchism? And this is not a jab at anarchism, okay, because we have anarchist people at CibCom, okay? But this person was asking, how will classes distribution work under anarchism? Will there be roving optometrists, or will there hopefully be one per commune? And then some guy answered, any glasses? Somebody else says, hey, I like making glasses. I've had people who need them, take these. Thanks. I know that person's heart was in the right place, okay? Because she's like, yeah, we don't need to be bound by capitalism. We can imagine a different world. You can just leave everything to the goodwill of people. The supply chains are extremely complex. Just put it here, like I said, gas, electricity, or clothes. This table, everything needs a lot of input for production, transportation, etc. So you need to be able to, if not detail, at least sketch how that is going to be solved after capitalism. Not just, yeah, people will, for example, yeah, glasses. Someone makes glasses, but someone makes very complex medicine research. Depends on a lot of inputs and a lot of people coordinating. I like making lemonade. Okay, but you need some bottles to put that lemonade in, or some glasses, or some, right? So you need to coordinate with those people. And then we got serious proposals, the last answer. Some proposals have been tried in history, historical examples, Soviet Union or other planned economies. They had many flaws, which is what we're trying to learn from, okay? You got market socialism which still has private, independent producing units. Okay, only workers are in control of those units. That is leagues above capitalism, but still not fully overcoming markets and the law of value. You got Paracon 2, which is participatory economics by Robin Hannell, a decent and I think very interesting proposal. And then we got our proposal, cyber communism. Cyber communism is nothing more than taking control of the process of social production and reproduction, okay, so that we can achieve human emancipation, control social production and reproduction in a rational way. So Leon is going to take it from here, okay?
All right. Hey everyone. So, in order to establish why it is that planning is so necessary, we need, in order to escape things like capitalism and climate change, we need to understand what it is about markets that makes them fail. So, if you go to slide 14, I'll talk briefly about market physics. So basically, you can introduce econophysics as a way to on slide 14. You can introduce econophysics as this. You basically take physics intuition, physics reasoning about things like symmetries and conservation laws, and about taking thermodynamic limits, which is like taking a very large ensemble of actors obeying certain engagement rules, and you can model that to, in a very simple way, to reproduce a lot of the functional behavior of markets. So what Yakovenko showed, and you can scroll down a little bit if you want, is that essentially, now this is not a perfect analogy, as Anwar Shaikh pointed out in his lectures and in his book, but the analogy that we're going to go with here is the economy as an ideal gas, where the money in someone's account is analogous to the kinetic energy in that gas. Now, in this simple picture, we're ignoring things like savings, we're ignoring things like taxation and import and export flows. So just take the simple closed circuit model of an economy where you have a fixed amount of money. And Yakovenko showed that in the same way that you have a what's called a thermalization of an ideal gas, in a room, like the gas particles in a room kind of exchanging momentum with each other basically at random, you can treat the economy in the same way, where money is analogous to the kinetic energy of the gas. So from that basic starting point, we get that markets obey a sort of dual function distribution called a Fokker-Planck distribution, which is composed of a thermal bulk, a Maxwell distribution bulk for like the bottom 97% of wealth, and then a power law right tail, that has a few extremely wealthy people. And this would be your power law or Pareto distribution. Those of you who are economists in the room might be familiar with that. And these two functions are taken together. And you can think about it as like you've got a additive diffusion in the bulk, in the working class bulk, and then you have a multiplicative diffusion in the power law tail. So And that is the maximum entropy state of the economy. And if you know anything about thermodynamics, and you might have heard this before, basically a system will tend towards its maximum entropy state because that maximum entropy state has the largest number of microstates. Now, I don't have a whole lot of time to get into how entropy works, but for those who might want a little exposition on what that is, basically, the way I think about entropy is that it's the amount of information in bits that you ignore about the exact configuration of a system when you only look at the bulk properties of that system. What do I mean by that? Let's take an example. Let's say I've got 2 die and I roll them both. I want to add up the results. And I'm going to fill out a table for all the possible results, right? I've got one outcome where the sum of the result is 2, one outcome where the sum of the results is 12 because I roll 6 both times, but then I've got 6 results where the sum is 7. So in this very simple situation, the sum of the die rolls, that's your macro state basically. And we take the outcome of 7 to be the highest entropy state because there are the most ways to make that happen. There are 6 ways to make that happen, whereas there's only 1 way to get a 12 from 2 die, right? So that's the basic idea, and you can scale that up to arbitrary size, and that's basically what we're dealing with here with the mechanics of a market.
Do you want to share your own screen so that you can go through the, or you want me to?
I can, yeah, let me share my screen. I'm gonna
so that they
bounce
can
around
see.
probably.
If you want to change the different slide so that. So,
yeah, I'm gonna be all over the place here. So let me.
Yeah, so that you have more.
Give me 1 second. Sorry about that.
Basically, one of our comrades at CibCom, Herman, explained to me that econometrics is the use of statistical physics to try to research, to analyze the processes that take place in the market.
Yeah, so basically this is the simple model that I'm talking about here, where we treat the money amounts as analogous to the energy in gas particles, and we treat market interactions as random collisions. Now, obviously, again, this is not a perfect analogy, but it's good enough to get us a really good starting point for future analysis. And this is kind of an ongoing field of work here, where you've got the social architecture model developed by Ian Wright that also gives us some really good insights. And it's very similar outcome to what Yakovenko discovered and he's a physicist at University of Maryland, I think. So yeah, ignoring all that stuff, let's go back to the main presentation. So that kind of like gives you a little overview of how markets work. They will tend towards a very unequal distribution, no matter what you do, no matter how you start out. The markets will always exhibit this sort of functional behavior.
So sorry to cut you off. So the thing is that even if you like what libertarians and caps, what they propose, oh no, let's give everyone an endowment of means of production, we just exchange freely. Even if you do that and everything starts off on an equal basis, which we know capitalism hasn't started like that, of course, but even if you did that, you will still have inequality just by how markets work. In the end, it will eventually develop into that. So we can't keep markets and try to have human participation. So
now I want to give a brief argument for the connection between this behavior of markets and capitalism. So basically, you need 2 ingredients to make this happen. You need money and you need markets. Money basically is a transferable unit of account. And that, combined with markets, gives rise to this. And basically what happens is you get this right tail. This right tail of randomly wealthy people, no matter how you start your market out, that's how you're going to end up. You're going to get some people who are just randomly wealthy, right? And they can command more labor time. They can command more things in production to happen, and so they can influence more in society. And so you get the snowball effect where the markets generate these people who can act like capitalists, and then those people act like capitalists and they accumulate, and you end up back at the situation you started out with. If you go to a market socialist situation, you're going to go back to capitalism within like a decade or so, or maybe a couple decades. So anyway, that's the problem. Now, how do we fix that problem? We fix that problem by taking money and markets out of the picture and replacing them with a planned economy. So how does that work? Let's go to slide. Let's see. Let's go to slide 10.
Okay.
Or I'll do it. Sorry, I just realized I'm screwing. Okay, never mind. Okay, so yeah. Also, the Zoom is complaining that it's going to end, so I'll just rejoin the link, or you'll resend the link when it's done. So Yeah.
That's strike two for capitalism. Technology
Yes.
under capitalism.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay,
Total
do it
BS.
again.
Okay,
Yeah.
so basically how we get planning, how do we think about planning first of all? Planning allows us to control for feedback mechanisms. We can implement feedback mechanisms by hand to obtain certain outcomes. Now, as you may recall, markets they basically make it so that the actors in that market can only see profit as something to optimize over. So profit is the only thing you can optimize over in a market setting. That is not true in planning. In planning, you can pick your optimization goals by hand, democratically, and that's how this ties into having a democratic economy. So
Hold on, Leon, 1 second.
yeah.
I think I'm sharing. Can you share your screen again? Because you can go to the slide, or tell me which slide you want me to go to.
I'm sharing at slide 10 right now. Is that what's on the screen?
No, hold on 1 second.
Okay. Oh wait, sorry. I see. 1 sec. I'll just share my whole. Sorry, I shared the wrong thing. Never mind. I got it.
Hold
Okay.
on.
Technical difficulties.
Okay.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, we want to basically this is kind of an add-on to Marx's critique of political economy by saying, okay, taking this as the case, we know about business cycles, we know about the instabilities that exist in markets, we know about the disproportionality crises that pop up all the time, and the real competition, if you subscribe to that basically is a description of the diffusion of capital from low to high profit, yada yada. It's a whole thing. It's a mess, and is very inefficient. You get chronic unemployment, and a lot of people just aren't well off for a lot of reasons. So y'all are familiar with that, I imagine. So basically this just allows us to kind of take control of that system and to decide what to do about it, what to do with it. So how exactly will oh yeah, and you can show, by the way, through information theoretical arguments, that if you do disaggregated economic planning, that will always be more efficient in terms of the information involved on your network than a market. In the most ideal scenario possible, which is like this sort of Walrasian story, the Walras and Jevons story, the neoliberal story of economics, where you've got rational actors and perfect competition and all that. That is an idealistic scenario, and in that scenario, disaggregated planning is as good as a market, but no situation has ever existed where a market has been like that. That's basically physically just not allowed, just by material constraints. You may be able to make a toy model of that on a computer, but that's not going to represent how reality works, because in reality, order fulfillment lags order placement, and so on and so forth. It's a whole thing. So there is a so before I get into the history of all this, I want to talk a little bit about how we deal with this distribution. So at first, we're coming out of a capitalist economy. We're not just building this in a void, in a vacuum from scratch. We're building this on top of capitalism. So how do we get to this? How do we get here? So we want to fix the thermalization of markets issue by getting rid of money, because if money is allowed to accumulate across accounts, then you'll end up with that maximum attributed maximum Boltzmann distribution of wealth and income. The what I mentioned earlier. So labor vouchers differ from money in a couple key ways. First and foremost, they do not exchange between accounts. They are issued upon work performed and are destroyed from existence upon expenditure at either pseudo shops or online or whatever it is that you purchase in like sanctioned pseudo shops. A pseudo shop is like a shop but without money. It deals with distribution. It deals in kind. Yeah. Labor vouchers are also semantically meaningful. So what do I mean by that? Money, you think, okay, what does a dollar say? What is the content of a dollar? What is that telling me? Well, and you can show fairly easily that that there is a very strong correlation between the price of a commodity and its vertically integrated labor time. So like how much labor went into that commodity, essentially. And that's got the best correlation. So that we can take that's like Marx's hypothesis of the law of value, is that the integrated labor time in a commodity acts as a dynamic attractor for price. it's not where price goes to, it's where price oscillates around, through some other driving and damping mechanisms. It's a very chaotic thing. So labor credits do not transfer, and they also are meaningful. We keep them meaningful by two forms of taxation. Number one, a depreciation tax, where we subtract from everyone's account, maybe like monthly or so, a certain amount for how much on average, for like what proportion of the economy on average as a whole depreciates from going unused. So we don't get inflation this way. And we also have a service tax, a tax for the labor time of the goods and services that are used in like education, hospitals, roads, infrastructure, all that fun stuff. And hopefully not roads by this point, get away from that, get away from traffic. That's another thing, by the way. We can plan traffic out of existence. No more sitting in rush hour. That would be an awesome bonus. Okay, so historically there have been other attempts to perform economic planning. There have been communes with social ownership and kind of like everyone kind of has access to the materials that are needed for daily life, that sort of thing. And there's good information flow in a commune, but it's not scalable, to my understanding. The USSR also has a history with planning. I've got a few critiques of that. Number one, they didn't plan in disaggregated terms. They planned in aggregate terms, and that was a material limitation at the time because computer technology was not developed at that point. So they were not able to plan for billions of commodity types. They were able to plan for a couple thousand commodity types, and so they had to aggregate by sector. Then they planned in monetary terms. They didn't take into account joint production, which is very useful and important if you're going to do planning of any kind. And there was also this sort of managerial bureaucracy, which made everything really inefficient. So, point is, USSR tried planning, but even if they had done the best they could have done, which is, taking Kantorovich's techniques on joint production into account seriously, then there still would have been struggles because if you plan in the aggregate, you end up with instabilities in your economy that can snowball and become massive problems. So that's one thing that we can do with planning, by the way, is we can plan away instabilities in commodity flows and usable flows, let's say, because we can spot ahead of time these sort of instability eigenmodes in our system matrix. And those of you who are more mathematically inclined will know what I'm talking about here. So the system matrix is basically the thing that we use to perform planning. Essentially, it takes three ingredients to get a good plan. You need your technology structure, which is what processes exist and what are they connected to. So like, if I'm making a pair of shoes, what are all the upstream bits and pieces that went into that? And also, what are the upstream pieces that went into the machinery that went into the shoe production? And what about that machinery, and so on and so forth? This is the basic idea behind vertical integration. We basically find out what all is happening upstream of a given usable, and we figure out its material recipe, essentially. It's a big recipe. And we store that recipe in forms of a matrix. So each row in the matrix gives us the basically the recipe for a single commodity or a single production process if we're going to go with joint production where we have multiple outputs per production process. And we can do that for an entire matrix. And we also add in, as extra rows in that matrix, two other ingredients. We need constraints, material constraints, and optimization goals. So the material constraints are things like your maximum CO2 allowed per unit time per region. They can be the maximum rate of change in the number of airports that you have. You have both static and dynamic constraints.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off. It's going to run out of the meeting, so I'll give you I'll make you another call. Invite you to the next one. Okay. Yeah. So that it doesn't cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
1 second, please.
Yeah, so 3 ingredients. Okay, recording on, and now I'm gonna go back to screen share.
Sorry about that. And there's a gentleman in the audience who wanted to ask you to clarify a term you were using. Okay. Yes. Do you want me to? Yeah. 1 second.
like maybe 3 or 4 months ago, you were talking about something production, some sort of like void production or
Yeah, it's a
some-
joint production. So in the Leontief approach to economic planning, which is the one that you usually introduce to, you take the technology matrix, basically your economy recipe, as producing an output vector where each entry in that vector is a single commodity. Now in joint production, we produce an output matrix where you've got a whole bunch of commodities as your output. So that way you can think about like a production process in, say, a steel production plant as producing both usable steel beams, let's say, and also the scrap metal that gets fed back into that production process. And then also waste. We can include waste in that output. So this just allows us to generalize beyond like having a single output per production process.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how that works. So right, 3 ingredients. So let's talk about where we get those from. So the technology structure, and the economy will probably be a sparse matrix. It'll be a sparse network. So we can deal with a lot of issues that we can ignore the issues that would come up if we had, like, say, a random matrix that would well model our economy. No, we've got a sparse matrix. And that means that it makes our job easier when it comes to planning and coordinating and all that fun stuff. So the technology structure is an observable. We just take that, we observe it by just asking a lot of questions, basically, and you can structure that however you want. The second ingredient, which I mentioned, was constraints, your material constraints. You're going to find those mostly from expert input. So that would be like your EPA type organizations. It would be your hydrology and soil quality administrations and so forth, right? So these would feed into the environmental limits. You can also ask directly about, like, in industry, okay, how fast is it possible for us to grow with this particular branch of production? And that's going to depend on the other branches too. So it's very nonlinear, but you can still take that, and it's not terrible if you do numerical techniques. And by the way, a lot of the planning stuff that I'm talking about, we're not going to probably be solving for the Leontief inverse, let's say, which is like your sort of how much inputs you need to get certain outputs. But we will be numerically approximating these solutions, and as such, the complexity of that procedure is low enough. It's a low enough polynomial, or lower than polynomial. It might be n log n, let's say. In some cases, like for the gradient descent approach to planning, that we can get within pretty good error tolerance pretty quickly. So the computational problem raised by von Mises is totally just void. It's bunk. It's outdated. It's dead. So, and then let's see. So how would this exactly feed into a democratic economy? Well, we have expert given constraints, we have an observed technology structure, but we also have optimization goals. And this is where the democratic part of democratic planning comes in. It's like we ask everyone, what do you want out of the economy? Do you want to optimize for longevity? Do you want more forests? Do you want more time off? And you can ask these questions, and it's a big political struggle. That's the point of a democratic society, is there's going to be a big ongoing political struggle over these optimization goals. But that is what we put in the domain of the public. And we can calculate feasible plans based on all of these, based on our technology structure, based on our goals, based on our constraints. And we can ask the public, okay, which one of these feasible plans do you want to implement? And then we implement it. We get feedback from the implementation. We make new plans according to that. And in this recursive, dynamic way, we obtain the goals that a democratic society actually wants. We obtain a democratic economy. And that's the basic idea behind how that ties in. Now, there's everyone that I've met in this space, in the economic planning space, has their own pet ideas on how exactly this will look. And I'm no different. I've got my own pet idea for how this will look. If you want to take an example on the ground, let's say, because, like, if you actually want to build a planned economy, you have to think, okay, where are we getting the social impetus for the validity of this thing? And you have to think about, okay, so how does capitalism physically manifest itself? how do the rules of capital show up in our world, and they show up physically. They show up in our infrastructure. So if you want to build a planned economy that makes sense, you have to think about how that will physically look in your world. And I'm thinking, okay, well, there's a lot of ways to do that. My favorite approach is to take like kind of like the Soviet urban planning model and mix that with other models to get like where you have this community core with your community congress, which is the atomic unit of the democratic society. And you surround that with schools, libraries, public cafeteria, and then take that, pharmacy, all that stuff, and you surround that with housing. And that's like your basic unit of the post-capitalist urban space. But that's just my idea. There's tons of great ideas out there, and you should look into them.
Can I piggyback of that?
Yeah.
So one of the things that sometimes people who support economic planning get accused of, and I think there's some point to it, is that it's all like technical. If that was what Leon explained, a lot to take in. It's because it's complex and it's a lot of, I don't know about your background, but to me, which I told you come from law, political science, sociology, sometimes it's a bit overwhelming. So sometimes that is an accusation. Oh, it's all technical, but the point we want to make is that at CibCom we take the issue of any type of economic planning must be democratic. So the institutions cannot be forgotten. You don't have to forget about that and be, no, it's all technical. No, we need to also work on the institutional design so that we get the feedback from people for the planning. It's not planning if it's just done by an elite. That was one of the criticism of the Soviet Union. And if you do it with your best intentions, if you're part of an elite, you're going to forget about what's the point of planning in the first place, which is to meet social needs, and that means the needs of the people. So
yeah, so the image that I want to kind of implant in your minds about how planning would work basically is not as like this room with a bunch of fancy chairs in it with people sitting in those chairs deciding what are we doing in the economy today. No, what we're looking at is more like this sort of quasi-automated system sitting on our current infrastructure that's maintained by engineers. Now, what physical infrastructure do we need for this? We need 4 ingredients. We already have them. We need the internet, check. We need big data, check. We need cloud computing, check. And we need the Swift banking system, check. We've got all the ingredients we need to put planning software on top of that. And that's going to take more than like 10 to 15 years if the working class actually gains power in, say, the US or Europe or somewhere like that. It may take longer if we're developing this technology from scratch in the global south. So that's something that has to be considered on a regional basis. Just, what material constraints am I working under to get this in place? And finally, what is one of the biggest draws for me to economic planning is that we can use economic planning to basically respond to mega disasters in a way that makes sense. We can respond to climate change.
You can go to the slide. Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. So we need this to respond to climate change. It's not just like, oh, this can help us. No, we need this. We need to move beyond markets to address climate change because market-based solutions do not work, have not worked, and will not work. And it's not that difficult mathematically to show that. And some of the references that we have here today go deeper into that, especially the ones by there's a recent book that came out. I don't know if it's in the slide here, but it's Economic Planning in an Age of Climate Crisis by Cockshott, Cottrell, and Dappridge. It's a very good read. It just came out. I highly recommend it. And it goes more into the weeds on that. But basically, we can use planning to address climate. Here's a quick little rough and dirty argument for why that's the case. So take the UK economy as an example. I don't know off the top of my head exactly how much it needs to be done to get not only transit and electric grids, but also industry off of fossil fuels. But, let's say we need to replace some coal-based coking ovens for iron with electric arc furnaces that are fueled by, say, hydrogen or whatever. That's going to take a certain material cost. We need to replace power generation with like nuclear and wind. That's going to take a lot of investment. And it looks like from the numbers that I've been familiar with, it looks like it's probably going to be a trillion and a half, 1.5 trillion pounds, somewhere in that ballpark. and that is more than the gross investment in the UK, period, on an annual basis. So, and a large part of that is just because things that have a large constant capital cost, a lot of buildings, a lot of infrastructure, oil rigs, warehouses, factories, these things have chronically lower rates of profit because they have a higher constant capital composition. And so capital does diffuse from low to high profits, but that just means it doesn't diffuse to infrastructure very often. So you see decrepit infrastructure. You see it in the US right now, where you've got roads and bridges falling apart and nuclear power plants falling apart, and this is in part because it's not profitable to shift towards high infrastructure, high material cost infrastructure like a renewable energy grid. And also, you've got some inertia to fight against too, because think about it. If you're an investor trying to go for a new oil rig or whatever, you're going to want to get the maximum return on an investment to that oil rig. How do you do that? Well, you have to also maintain the refineries downstream of that oil rig in order to make that oil rig useful for as long as possible. So it's like, oh, we've got the oil rig. We need to maximize our use of it. Let's get some new refineries to help us do that. And then 10 years later, it's like, oh, we've got these refineries. We need to make the most use out of the refineries. Let's make more oil rigs. So it's a death spiral that we're in right now with capital. And planning will allow us to get out of that hole. And it's the only viable way I've seen that will let that happen. And my background is not just physics. I also do meteorology and climate science. So this hits very close to home for me. And it's not just CO2 that we have to account for. It's also other pollutants like mercury and soil acidity and plastics and all that fun stuff, right? So there's like 8 different air pollutants alone that we have to control, and we can do that easily with a planned economy. We can just set static and dynamic constraints into our system matrix, plug and chug. We have a couple feasible plans now. Now it's just up to society to decide which one we implement.
Okay, you want to go to the socialist reproductive work. This is one of the lines of research that some comrades at CibCom are working on. Like we mentioned, we're working on fleshing out institutional democratic design for a post-capitalist society, working out on how it can solve the metabolic fracture, issues like global warming, etc., and also how to socialize reproductive work. Cities nowadays, not cities, it's a combination of factors, but cities are also one of them, are designed so that reproductive work is individualized, is individualized and mostly feminized. Okay, so the old saying that women hold half of the sky. You women usually are assigned the reproductive work of capitalism, without which capitalism cannot even function. It's what we call in Spanish trabajo de cuidados, or care. I don't know if you will use that translation, but it's basically yeah. Okay, thank you. So the point I want to make is that a planned economy, like we were describing, will not bring automatically an utopia where every type of oppression will go away. We'll have, gender equality, racial equality, all of those things, right? The point is that a planned economy is going to make us more free, and it's going to make the social metabolism, the way that we interact with each other, more clear, so that we can decide collectively how to overcome those types of oppression, right? So, like I mentioned before, this is an ongoing discussion and research program. We want to get more people involved because maybe we're just missing things about, like, for example, there's a lot of male members of the group. So we might be missing some stuff, the whole reproductive work thing. We try to think about it. We try to read authors on the topic, but we might be missing something. So what we want to do is to incorporate the contributions of more people, more working people, working people, female workers, and people of all backgrounds, so that we can all think about collective solutions to those issues. So one of those is one of the ideas that some of the authors have come up, like Paul Cockshut, is to try to push future post-capitalist socialist cities to a sort of commune-based living space where all of the stuff about, cooking, cleaning, all of that stuff, it's made communally so that, just by economy of scale, you save labor on that, and it's not something that you dump on some people, usually women. So that will be one of the ways to go forward. And also, I wanted to go back just real quick to the labor vouchers thing and the money issue that Leon was talking about. The thing about labor vouchers that I think is very, very interesting is that labor vouchers are just a representation of work time in a post-capitalist society. You get labor vouchers by contributing your work to the labor pool of all society. You want to work less? Okay. You might not want so many labor vouchers. You're okay with working a little bit and then having free time to, paint or write books or do whatever you enjoy. Okay. With money, that doesn't work that way. A lot of people make a lot of money and they're not even contributing anything to society. A lot of people who work very hard, and I see that in the school I work in, cleaning staff, they work their asses off and they get paid shitty wages. Why is Jeff Bezos making shitload of money when those people who are working hard are getting so little money? Labor vouchers remove the veil of money that make all the interactions, our interactions between the members of society be hidden, and it makes a very transparent. It makes it very transparent that you are contributing this much work to society. So you get these labor vouchers that you can spend on consumption if you're able to work. Because we will also democratically choose or decide, those people who are not able to work, retired people, disabled people, how many labor vouchers they get because they are not choosing not to work, they're just not able to, right? So we will democratically decide that, and they will also have a consumption ability, right?
Yeah,
So
I've got a couple more little things to add.
Okay.
That I kind of
I think we have a couple of minutes more. Yeah.
Yeah, so just a couple of little things. So first of all, the best way to think about a planned economy is basically as a giant household economy on a tight budget. That's the best way to think about that. And then also because we have a planned economy, we can respond faster to shocks than price signals. So the amplitude of disturbances will be smaller, and we can catch them faster, and we'll not have boom bust cycles anymore. So no more no more crashes and extremely turbulent behavior in how production is structured. And finally, yeah, so just having that short response time, we can respond to things like hurricanes and pandemics really efficiently. We can do that while staying within. We might be able to do all that with also staying within like environmental constraints, and this will also require us to build a cultural attitude of repairmanship and craftsmanship so that you keep usables around longer. You get rid of planned obsolescence, and you can do that through democratic means. Like for instance, you can have representatives of the consumer base in a community congress, let's say, being assigned to go in and inspect the quality of the goods produced at a given production facility. So quality control that kind of falls outside the sphere of planning. That's one area that we need to kind of also think about. But there's also other areas, and the main guiding philosophy I have there is just assign people to do those jobs if their material interests are aligned with the goals stated in that job. So let consumer reps look for look for usable quality, whereas worker reps look for workplace safety and time off and stuff like that, right? So that's how to think about approaching building a democratic society physically, like actually on the ground. How do you organize your community councils or whatever you want to call them? And how do you get the job done? And how we start building little experiments here and there so we can start building up and becoming a larger part of the economy as a whole to eventually take away capitalism entirely.
Okay, you think we should start wrapping up?
Yeah.
Can you go to the last few slides?
Mm-hmm.
We want to join the plan. So, like I mentioned, just want to stress that, okay, we're a collective that's working. We have our jobs. We just feel very strongly about the potential of this project. So this is just a glimpse of what we're working on. Leon did an amazing job. I probably was the least qualified of the group to present all of these issues, especially the technical ones. But if you are interested in learning about the discussion group, about the topic, everything, we need your participation because we want working class participation in this. It's not something, like I said, that's going to be left to the experts.
Yep.
No one is an expert, right? We are all experts in the sense that we are all workers and we need to take control of our destinies. So everyone has something to contribute. You don't know about maths, okay, you can maybe contribute to democratic institutional design. You can maybe contribute to, I don't know, whatever you feel that is going to be necessary for a post-capitalist, communist, or socialist, or planned economy society, okay? So go to the next slide at CibCom. Yeah, okay. So we just encourage you to join the plan with our website there. You can follow us on social media. We are in Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. It's a QR code for the website, I think. You can shoot us an email to join there's an open Discord server called CibGlow, where we have a channel just for international comrades who want to, maybe just talk about the topic, or maybe you guys want to contribute something, collaborate with us. We will welcome you with open arms because we are trying to establish links with people with participated in conferences in Russia. We got some comrades in China. We want to make some contacts here in the US so that we got more input from people all around the world and learn together about economic planning. So I don't know, if Julian want to add anything else?
Well, I don't really have anything to plug. I mean, I just run the Conferencia server. It's linked in the CibClobe server here if you want to join that and check us out. We do weekly study sessions. We're currently working through economic planning in an age of climate crisis, and also How Labor Powers the Global Economy by Farjun Makover and Zachariah. And I'm just trying to survive grad school, so. This is all a passion project for me, so I don't really have that much in the way of official things to plug. So, all right.
Thank you so much for your patience, especially with the tech issues at the beginning. I can assure you it was crazy with me running to the old chapel, pouring with my computer without an umbrella, thinking that I wasn't going to be able to pull up the audio thing. But thank you so much for your patience, and we can take questions if you feel like, or if you just want to discuss or share your thoughts or whatever. Oh, that's it.
Is there any
mic so that, yeah.
Hi, how's it going? Do you have any modeling or resources on the total amount of labor you think a planned economy would take? I would hope that we would work less, right? Is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, how much less do we have to work? And unfortunately, I don't have much in the way of that because counterfactual agent-based modeling is a relatively new field. But in order to think about that, you have to think about, okay, so what processes are we going to be cutting out? We don't need like bomb manufacturing. We don't need yacht manufacturing. We don't need F-35s or golf courses.
Health insurance, you mentioned.
But each of these has a vertically integrated cost associated with it, not just its immediate layer of production. So, we could probably get by honestly on like a 16 to 24-hour work week. That would be my educated guess.
Yeah, the objective that we will have is to work, have a fully automatic, luxury communism society. Unfortunately, so at least for now, we were not able to pull that off, but that will be the final objective. So until we get there, and the materials constraints for that, but we just want to work as little as possible to get as many goods and services and good life as possible. So that's the point. Instead, what we have now in capitalism is we work long hours so that we make little money, live in increasingly worse conditions, worse than our parents and grandparents even, maybe in some cases. And so that a few people can go to space in their, rockets, or they can, create their vanity projects. So why are we putting up with that? That's what we are trying to abolish.
So basically, there are three types of labor potential. There is productive labor potential, reproductive labor potential, and free labor potential. We're trying to maximize free labor potential as a general rule, so that you just have more time to be alive and be with those you love and do the things you love to do during the day. You know, so that's the whole idea here.
Thank you for all these ideas. So I'm curious about the in-between. Until we have big data planning for us, the role of people. What are the touch points for decision making? So Kali yesterday was talking about their planned work. Like their cooperatives, they start with their needs and then they develop cooperatives to meet those needs.
Mhm.
And I'm coming also from Ethiopia, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, where we make 5-year plans every year.
Mhm.
But in reality, those plans really are not very democratic at all. Like it's a bunch of guys who come up with a plan. So I like the idea that could be transformed. Like every 5 years, maybe you could do something. But so I'm curious where people should have touch points. Like how often do people come together and decide priorities? And on what scale? Like, if you're talking about planning for climate change, that makes sense. In Ethiopia, they make plans. They decide the 10 crops we're going to prioritize for the next 5 years. And then climate change hits every 2 years. I mean, a serious drought. And so, yeah, we can plan on our scale, but yeah, I mean, yeah, so my questions are two. Until the computers are figuring out the plans for us, where are the touch points for humans to democratically engage? And second, on what scales is this possible? Could you see this being practical?
Okay, so there's a couple parts to answer there. First of all, we can plan on multiple spatial and temporal timescales. That's just adding a dimension to the scale of our math. Basically, we just add a time dimension there.
You were
and the
to
way
early on to the slide on the 3 levels of planning. Maybe that could be helpful too. Maybe the planning. That one.
these,
No, the previous one.
this one. This one.
26,
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So there's different types of plans that we can think about as well. You have the ones that are like strategic. So basically this is where our goals come in, our optimization goals. Like how many more of, let's say, train stations do we want? How many more airports do we want? How much more food do we want? This is something that we decide democratically by taking input from everyone in society at every level. And this would be mediated probably from the ground up. So basically, in my pet approach, you'd have the community congresses. These are the atomic units of the democratic process, and they're just people in the community coming together and legislating amongst themselves what they need, what their needs are, and they feed that in as an input into creating the plan. Essentially, there's more steps involved there, but there's like some recursive steps to decide. Okay, like let's say there's a proposal that someone brings forward, and the people at the community congress at this location like it, and they like it enough to pass it upstream, get it formalized, and then that proposal gets distributed to the other community congresses whose people would be affected by the proposal. That way, the people voting for stuff are voting for stuff that affects them. And we can put in more dynamic ways to do this than just one person, one vote. Let's say, like, if we have a reproductive rights issue, we could only let we could let people who only people who are capable of giving birth give input to that kind of proposal, right? So we can do that kind of dynamic legislating. We can decide representatives by sortition, which is like, because it's sort of random selection process that you read about in similar to like a Greek democracy, let's say. Also, Zoom's gonna kill me again in about 10 minutes, so right there. Yeah. And then on the what do we do in the meantime? It's a really good question. So basically, we will not have a fully planned economy immediately. That's going to take time. It's going to take a gradual process of subsumption. We can nationalize some industries off the bat, like banking and housing. We can nationalize that like that, but it's going to take longer to nationalize other stuff. manufacturing and distribution, whatever the case is. That gets me to my third point, actually, is that I don't know yet. I don't know exactly how this is going to play out, but what we need to do is just keep as a top priority that we eventually get to no money and no markets. So we need to have the planned sector grow fast enough that and completely enough that it subsumes enough of the economy that it becomes like the dominant thing in the economy. So you don't have black markets. We don't want black markets because black markets and corruption, they can poison a post-capitalist project and bring it to its knees and destroy it. And we saw that in some respects in the USSR because, in large part, because their planning mechanisms were insufficient for reasons of human error and also just material insufficiency. And they collapsed back to capitalism within a couple decades. We do not want a repeat of that. That would be a tragedy. We don't need that. So, in the meantime, it's just going to take a more heightened class conflict. We'll have these worker-owned co-ops. We'll put the firms in control of we'll put workers in control of the firms immediately, but then they're still autonomous accounting units on this sort of market-esque network, economic network, and that's going to be there at least for a while. And because we still have money in markets at first, we still have thermalization, we still have the generation of capitalist relations in the economy, and we need to just chop that off as it comes. So that's going to mean probably a lot of enforcement on economic activities, at least until we can get the planned sector rolling. I know that's not the ideal answer, but I don't see an ideal answer here, honestly. I think that's our best way, is just to be open and upfront that, yes, we're going to need to have a very tight grip on the steering wheel of the economy until we can get this whole labor voucher plan system set up.
I also want to add that in order to maybe try to answer or to point out first that that's one of the key aspects that I was trying to stress, that we need strong institutional design, right? You might want to look, I don't know if you're familiar with Paul Coxshott and Olin Cottrell. There are two authors that we draw a lot of in their book Towards a New Socialism, touches upon that sort of thing about what sort of democracy we want to have. It's one of the, that's a cover of the book. So if I recall correctly, it's been a while since I last read it, but Coxshott and Cottrell talk about referendums being used to decide like the big picture questions. Right? Do we want to invest more in the development of means of production so that in the future we will need to work less? Or maybe we need to work a little bit more for now? Or do we just want to not work so much? Or, that a lot of those stuff is decided, big picture thing, referendums, okay? But those should be like very few and in between. And if you think about it, nowadays investment decisions are made not democratically, but by people who have money. So they're not democratic at all. What we're trying to do is move towards one person, one vote on those big pictures. Then this is the interesting thing that they propose. That I find it very fascinating. And it's not, might sound like a crazy idea, but if you think about it, it makes sense. They talk about, I don't know if the word in English is logocracy, but it's basically assigning, right now what we have is a representative democracy, right? But our representatives get there through a lot of hurdles, a lot of biases. You are more likely to be a representative if your dad was, or if you have connections with big companies, or so it's not really like we choose. And when we go to vote, it's like, okay, a lesser evil, maybe, or so what they propose is for some committees, for some democratic decisions where you need representatives because you're not going to ask everyone everything, you will go crazy. If you're living in a post-capitalist society and you need to vote 20 times a day, you will be like, okay, this is too much. But for some of those decisions, what they propose is the random drawing of the general population, people into those committees. Why? Because what you mentioned, for example, you make 5-year plans. Yeah, okay, made by the experts. They're in theory done for the good of the people. But there's biases in who gets to decide those plans. Even if they got their best intentions, even if I was saying, no, I'm going to do it for the people, and I truly believe that, maybe some biases are working in my mind that I don't know about. Maybe unconsciously, I think that, people who studied the same thing as I did, because, that's the best degree to get, they should be more likely to be in the company. And I tend to choose those people or people who look like me or whatever. So what they propose is logocracy, which is random drawing from general people, so that you get a random sample. And it's
There's another more important reason to do random sampling. It's because if you do anything else, you intentionally, well, unintentionally, perhaps, make some other thing what you're actually deciding for. So, like in an election, you're kind of like by design, the election kind of favors the most popular candidate. That it has nothing to do with competence.
Yeah. Okay. We got another question.
Yeah, I think in some ways you have touched on this already, but I'm curious to hear more about how you imagine everyday people on a mass scale becoming motivated to participate in democratic planning. And I'm asking partly because in our experience in Boston, Massachusetts right now, we're about to launch participatory budgeting. And, it's an opportunity for everyone in the city to come out and get involved in directly deciding how the city's dollars are spent. But I think we can expect a really low level of participation in that. Probably, on a scale of a few thousand people in a city of about 700,000 people.
Okay.
So I'm just curious to know, like, what are your thoughts on how that can unfold?
Okay, so let me paint you a picture. This is what you see as someone living in this system. And I'm going to take as the example, my pet example again, which is where you have community congresses in a sort of social core where you've got the schools and the libraries and all that all in one kind of general place, and you surround that by housing, surround that by transit. So take that as your general framing for this setup. So what someone sees is they go into the community congress. There's what is the community congress made of? It's made of a bunch of interest groups, and these are material interest groups. So you've got student groups, you've got elder groups, you've got women's groups, you've got LGBT groups, you've got all kinds of groups, all that are participating. And because you have a tight knit community like that, you've got a high frequency of high complexity communication, unlike what we have right now in the US and the Anglosphere countries. You kind of like organically build solidarity with that physical infrastructure. So again, this comes back to how do you think about like how do you design the physical expression of a post-capitalist society? That's the kind of question you have to think about when thinking about that. So so let's say you're interested as a teacher, you want to obtain a better curriculum. Well, you would bring that up with your group, first of all, and the group, if they're interested in pursuing that route, they might produce a proposal. They'll bring a proposal to the mediator or moderator or whatever of the community congress, put that on the docket. The whole community congress talks about it. Whoever's interested anyway can show up and talk about it, and decide, okay, do we want to pursue this? So basically, with the community congress, you're not deciding exact legislation, you're deciding on goals. And this is a very important distinction to make because think about it, a legislation, it's very easy to hack that and make thousands of pages of nonsense and bury some very hideous clauses in that nonsense. And no one has time to read it, and it gets passed, and it's a giant mess. It's a disaster. So instead, the community congresses decide on goals. The goals get formalized upstream. So when I'm talking about upstream and downstream, I'm talking about like, okay, so democracy is bottom up. The legislative supremacy of the post-capitalist society rests at the level of the community congress or equivalent institution. Now, the administrative framework, that is more top-down. So the administration responds to what the people want and implements that, however structurally that needs to happen. It could be a tree-level diagram, it could be something else, it just depends. And again, this is something to explore when we actually get an experiment going. It's not something that I can fully answer. I can just give you like an example, counterfactual world where this might work and how it might work in that world.